What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the last show of 2022, episode 37. Bet Parks presents Stick to Hockey Live. And what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to relive what I thought was the greatest interview of the year, the greatest guest of the year. It's going to be Bill Clement, and this was right after he went into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And Bill was such an interesting guest. We know Bill's a great orator, a guy who tells great stories and can communicate himself incredibly well. And in this interview, you'll hear in just a second, he does exactly that. So we'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about the Flyers prior and the win last night against the San Jose Sharks briefly as well. But let me tell you about Bet Parks, because it's the end of the year and a great time at this time of year with all the bowl games, college football, pro hoops, college hoops, hockey, you name it. Futures, playoffs are on the way in football. It's a great time to get on the Bet Parks app and get in on the action, because you're going to have a blast. Because it's not just, hey, get your action in before the game and then watch it. It's much more than that. It's actually live in-game betting, same game parlays. It's player performances, props, teasers, parlays, you name it. It's all there for you. Like I said, you've also got futures and all kinds of stuff. Great stuff as well. Excuse me, I had a cough. So get in on the action with the Bet Parks app. It's fantastic. Download it today. Use the promo code Jason750. That'll get you a risk-free bet up to $750. Again, risk-free bet, new and existing users, $750 by just using that promo code JASON750 on the Bet Parks app. Terms and conditions do apply. So download the app immediately, if not sooner. Download the Bet Parks app today. You got to be over 21, present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, we're also getting down to the end of the year for Conquerville Subaru, because you still have time. You got a couple days left, all the way up until January 3rd for the Subaru Share the Love event. Now, Conquerville Subaru on Route 202 in Glen Mills, fantastic dealership. So get down there for the Subaru Share the Love event, because this is great. If every new vehicle sold, Subaru is going to donate $250 for every new car sold to one of 5 charities. And you get to choose either the ASPCA, Make-A-Wish, Meals on Wheels, Nation Sparks, and Conquerville Subaru's hometown charities, which is Namor's Children's Hospital of Delaware. Fantastic charity to be a part of as well. December, great, and January coming up is a great time to visit that beautiful showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills. Oh, man. We head into the holiday season. We're kind of wrapping up the holiday season. Check out the certified pre-owned inventory and pick from a list of incoming Subaru vehicles as well. It is Conquerville Subaru, more than a dealership, great service department, and they also have a free car wash with every service visit. So visit ConquervilleSubaru.com online and check out the showroom of Route 202 in Glen Mills, and remember that Conquerville cares. So Flyers get the win last night over San Jose in overtime, but first overtime win. I think they're 1-7 in overtimes. They get the win on Tony DeAngelo's game winner. He had 2 assists in the game as well. Travis Konechny, boom, 2 goals in the game, his 4th straight multi-point game of the season. 4 straight for Konechny. And, I mean, the numbers on his game log are eye-popping. So he's played in 30 games this season. He's got 10 multi-point games. He only has 7 games this season where he has 0 points. So he's got points in 23 of the 30 games he's played. And the 4 straight multi-point games, which he accomplished last night, is now a career high streak of multi-point games. In his last 21 games, he's got 25 points, 12 goals, 13 assists, 2 power play goals, 8 even strength goals, and 2 shorthanded goals. Talk about an all situations player over that stretch. I mean, think about that. Only 2 on the power play, 8 at 5-on-5, where 90% of the game is played, and then 2 shorthanded. All situations, up a goal, down a goal. He's having an unbelievable season. I think the biggest job of Torts was 2 things, was to develop young players and find out what they are at the NHL. Guys like Tippett, guys like Frost, guys like Cates. But the other big part of the job in front of Torts for the season was seeing if he could get guys like Konechny, Provorov, pointed in the right direction again. And boy, has it worked huge for Travis Konechny. Now, he's got to keep it going. He's only played 30 games, not even at the midway point of the season. It's still a relatively small sample size, all things considered. But boy, is he having a great first half. No doubt about that. So that's a good thing. Flyers will be back tomorrow. They'll take on the Los Angeles Kings for New Year's Eve. Monday, they'll wrap up this road trip in Anaheim, and then they'll be back at Wells Fargo Center coming up on Thursday to take on Arizona. And then I think it's a week from Sunday is Toronto comes into town. That's always a good game to go watch. So that's what's coming up on the docket for the Flyers. And we're going to have a great 2023 here on Bet Parks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. We're going to have great guests, great hockey conversation, and much more. But let's get to our interview of the year of 2022. The Hall of Fame class this year had two connections to Philadelphia. One was Al Morganti, who also appeared, did a great appearance here on Stick to Hockey Live. And then this gentleman, Bill Clement. Bill is a great guy to talk to, and I think everybody's going to enjoy this interview if you missed it. So let's get right now to it. Here is from episode 20, right after Bill Clement went into the Hockey Hall of Fame, conversation with the legendary broadcaster, player, and pundit of hockey, Mr. Bill Clement. Here it is. All right, let's get to the man of the hour right now. Well, he was the man of the hour last week, but we're giving him another hour. He's going to come into us just in retirement, looking savvy, looking good. A man who played in 11 NHL seasons, 2 cups, was a captain in the NHL, has the distinction of playing for the Atlanta Flames and the Calgary Flames. He's a broadcast legend, a hockey legend. It is Bill Clement. How are you, Billy?
Jason, I haven't had a bad day in a long time, to be honest with you. You know, life is good. Life is very good. Thank you.
Your hockey journey is fantastic. It's got so many, tentacles of the branch. You have this hub of the game, and you have all these hockey tentacles that come out. What's the last week been like for Bill Clement?
Unique. I guess I'm only going to get to go in the Hockey Hall of Fame once, so it's a once in a lifetime experience. And being in Toronto with, well, there were 20 of us, relatives, brother, wife, son, daughter, cousins. It was such a fulfilling experience. I'm still kind of pinching myself. The call that I got a couple of months ago telling me that I was going into the hall caught me completely by surprise. I've never once in my life thought of it. As my brother said, you know, he was the first call that I made when I got the news that I was going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And my wife Sissy and I are very close to Pete and Nora, my brother-in-law and his wife. And at one point, they were really happy. Obviously, they were just tickled pink like I was that I was going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And there was a lull in the conversation. And at one point, my brother said, you know, Bill, I always knew your hands would never get you into the Hockey Hall of Fame, but I thought your silver tongue might give you a chance.
Yeah.
I actually used that in my acceptance speech because he was sitting right there. It's something only a brother can say and get away with. But it was funnier than hell when he said it. I thought it was great. And he was absolutely right. And I finished my acceptance speech by saying, and you know what, Pete? You were right about these.
Yeah. Well, those hands got the job done. Let's be really honest here. They did get the job done to tune of 148 goals, 208 assists in the NHL, 356 points. So those hands had something in them.
That was one season for Wayne Gretzky, by the way. It took me 11.
That's bananas, right? The fact that the numbers that he put up. Who made the call to you? Who let you know?
Chuck Caton, who is a retired broadcaster, longtime radio voice of the Hartford Whalers, and after that, the Carolina Hurricanes. He chairs the committee, the 6-man committee. They're all Hall of Famers that are on the committee. People like Sam Rosen, Doc Emmerich. So he made the call, and he said, "It's funny. He left a voicemail because I couldn't pick up, and he said, call me. You know, call me as soon as you can." And I thought, why would Chuck Caton be calling me? Because I didn't know that he chaired the committee. I didn't study the Hall of Fame, various committees. And he said, I'm so thrilled to be able to make this call. He said, this is overdue. There were circumstances with COVID and with a very well-known broadcaster passing away that they decided to honor. And he said, this should have happened a few years ago. And I wasn't keeping track of time, but he said, it's your time. The committee voted unanimously that you're going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And Chuck was so excited to tell me. I can also tell you, Jason, that I guess it was a couple of hours after the original call that I got a call that made me as happy as the call about me going into the Hall. And it was the call telling me that Al Morganti was going into the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame. Al and I go back over 40 years. When he was, he's young. We were both young. I was playing for the Atlanta Flames, and Al got a job working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution covering the Flames. So, we got to know each other then. I moved to Calgary with the team, and he went to Philadelphia to write with the cover the Flyers for the Inquirer. And then our careers really intersected. We worked on ESPN together, and then we ended up working on Comcast and NBC Sports Philadelphia covering Flyers. And I love Al. He is a great human being, and I was so darn happy that Al was going in. So we got a chance to, stick around, hang out together a little bit in Toronto, and I was really happy for Al. Very happy.
That's crazy because you
Yeah.
guys, you do have that so much history with Al
Yeah, but
over
people
so
thought it
many
was
years.
kind of like somebody put the fix in for Philly,
Yeah.
like,
Well, it's about
well,
time.
and what the committees are completely different. Al won the Elmer Ferguson Award. I won the Foster Hewitt Award for broadcasting. Al won his award for writing, for
Yeah.
his long writing career. So the committees, I don't even think the committees communicate with one another as to what they're doing. So this is completely coincidental that Al and I, with our Philadelphia backgrounds, both going in the same year.
Well, could that kind of synergy happen? And, if the Flyers are in the NHL draft lottery to land a player like Connor Bedard, can we make that happen, Billy?
Ooh, that would be a good start, because it's almost like there's a black cloud hanging over the Flyers. I mean,
Oof.
people say they're no good. I said, look, you take your number one center out of the lineup, and you're either 1 or 1A defenseman. That's what Ryan Ellis was supposed to be,
Mhm.
a top 2 defenseman. He's played 4 games in 2 years, right? And Sean Couturier out of the lineup. You add those guys in as healthy players, and I think we're talking about something completely different. So that black cloud with the injuries, just, I don't know. I'm not sure it's going to be. I'm not sure it's going to be the Flyers' year to win the lottery, the draft lottery. But I think the Flyers are overdue. Let's
Yeah.
just not let it be Buffalo or Edmonton, okay?
Yeah, right. Jeez. I
Like,
mean, how
what's
many
up with
times
that?
can you get it?
Yeah,
Enough
really.
already. Let's
Right.
spread the wealth a little bit here.
Yeah.
Um, let me ask you, go back a little bit. When when's the first time you put on skates?
I was probably 7 or 8. There was just a little frozen rink outside the tiny little English school that I went to, and you know, I I didn't play organized hockey till I was 12.
Yeah, that's
The
crazy.
English kids were not invited to participate and to try out for there were 2,800 people in our town, and our town was famous before I started playing hockey because Guy Lafleur grew up 2 blocks from me,
Yeah.
and I finally was some very progressive thinker finally decided to allow the English kids to try out, and I made the team right away. And I remember people saying, "Where's he been? We could have like Thurso, Quebec finished second in the giant Quebec Pee Wee hockey tournament,
Yeah.
and they lost to a mega team from Toronto because Guy Lafleur was like, I mean, he was as dynamic and as dominant as Wayne Gretzky was, as Mario Lemieux was, and they said we could have won it all if we'd had him. And I went, I've been here the whole time, guys.
Yeah.
So I started playing organized hockey when I was 12, and by the time I was 15, I was big. I was 6 feet tall and weighed about 180 pounds, and I could really skate. And I got scouted by a Chicago Blackhawks scout and made one of their junior teams in the Quebec League. So I was playing in the Q when I was 15, and it was only about my 4th season playing. So I picked it up pretty quickly, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I imagine there was a lot of outdoor playing for you out there and just skating because your skating is your hallmark to your game.
Yeah.
And I imagine you just were out there from sun up to sundown, dragging you off that ice.
Yeah, the school was only about a block and a half, small blocks. And my dad, could whistle. I've never been able to
Mhm.
whistle, like really shrill, loud
Yeah.
whistle. I could have been on the other side of town, and when it was time to come in, I hear dad. You had
You
this
knew to get
special
home.
whistle. But yeah, I mean, the only thing that would take me off the ice, and same with the other kids, is having our feet frozen.
Yeah.
Because it was damn cold on a lot of those rinks. And I started playing a little bit for the little school that I was going to when I was 8 or 9, but I was a goalie.
No kidding.
There's nothing worse than standing around in sub-zero weather with only skates on. I remember my feet being so cold. But
Yeah.
we would stay out there until we couldn't stand it. And then there was so much snow, and it would get packed down on the roads. They wouldn't scrape it down to gravel or to pavement. That once it got packed down, there were times where we could actually take our skates and skate on this packed down snow. And if not skate, we just played road hockey.
Yeah.
On foot. We just played and played and played. It's really interesting. My brother was a good player too. He's 3.5 years younger than me. My brother Pete, to this day, had a better shot than I did, and he was a defenseman. And when he was playing for the Ottawa 67's junior B team, and a guy, he sort of had this thing going with this other player on the other team. Guy took his stick with the round part of the curved part of the blade from behind, and he hit him like as hard as he could on the side of the face and knocked out 5 of his teeth and put a hole in his cheek and all of that stuff. And go figure, he lost the taste, for the game at that stage. So he retired.
Oof.
But we would practice shooting on one another with pucks and balls and everything in our driveway. And we had this old shingled house that was kind of brittle, almost like asbestos shingles. The house was white on the outside with tar paper underneath. And we shot wide once in a while, wide of the garage door, and just broke the house to bits. It almost looked like a war scene where somebody had shelled the house with all these black spots all over it. And my mom would come home. She'd go, "Oh, boys, what have you done again? Look at my house." My poor mom. My dad said, "When you turn 14, you're going to replace all of these." The day I turned 14, he brought home 2 big bundles of shingles and set them down and said, "Okay, you're 14, go for it."
Get to work.
Yeah, I fixed them all up.
You guys were like a demo crew.
Yeah, really.
You're adding value to the house, though. You put new shingles on it.
But the other ones were all faded, so these white ones even stood out.
Yeah, well, you had to darken them up a little bit with some puck hits. You didn't lose the love of the game at any point, Bill, because you have a very long playing career, and you jump right into broad. Like, when did you know? Did you know early on as a player that broadcasting was going to be an angle that kept you around the game for a long period of time?
No, although I was offered a job to be an analyst up in Canada when I retired in Calgary, but the money wasn't really very good at all. And I ended up going into the restaurant franchising business. I acquired the rights for Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama for a Canadian restaurant franchise. And the plan was going to be open up my pilot store, my first store, and then sell franchises based on the great success of that store. And I knew the importance of location, but I hadn't factored in that Atlanta had more food and beverage establishments per capita than any city in North America. And I finally opened up a place, and within a year, I knew I was in trouble. So I ended up, after my playing career, filing corporate and personal bankruptcy. I lost my home. My marriage fell apart. I had these bouts of depression. I was broke. I was scared. I had no job, no training, no college degree. And that's when I became a full-time actor. Because while I was looking for a restaurant location, I thought, geez, I haven't had a paycheck in a year.
Yeah.
What could I do that I might have an aptitude for that is financially rewarding, that might not be time consuming? That's everybody's dream job. And I thought, I think I might be able to do television commercials as well as some of the people that I see. So I got a teammate's wife, Kurt Bennett, the Bennett brothers. There were 5 of them that played pro hockey. And Kurt's wife, Susan, was an actress and a singer, and she had agents in Atlanta. So I got her to introduce me to some agents, and they said, "Yeah, you look okay. Get a headshot. We'll send you on some auditions." So I'd actually done a couple of commercials while I was having the restaurant built, and it was the only logical thing to do. So I launched the acting career, and it went really well. Ended up moving to New York and pursuing it there. And the phone rang one day, and it was ESPN saying, you want to try out for one of our jobs as color analyst? And I said, to myself, a steady paycheck would be a real good concept at this stage of my life. You have to audition for your lunch and your rent every week, unless you land a TV series, but that's 1 in 10,000. There were 5 of us, 5 ex-players. I said, what's the audition consist of? They said, a live game on the air.
Oh my goodness.
That was my audition, and I won the audition with ESPN, and that basically launched my my broadcasting career in 1986. So there was a 4-year lull in between where I went bankrupt, where I launched an acting career that ended up doing pretty well. So there was a lot went on in those 4 years between the day I retired and the day that I got the job at ESPN.
I imagine that the acting and getting comfortable in front of a camera helped you on that audition and eventually into your career.
I think it probably did, but it was not easy.
Yeah.
You want that adrenaline when you're an athlete, especially a pro athlete, and you're about to enter the arena or take the ice. You worry if that adrenaline flow isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So the problem with going into an audition, sitting there with this sterile thing called a camera, that's looking at you, is fighting the adrenaline and being able to channel it so that you don't appear to be overdosing with that adrenaline. And that was hard to focus it and channel it and fake it. Like I learned how to fake looking natural, in front of a camera. And, a lot of times in my career, I still had to, in the early going, it got easier and easier. But yeah, you're right. The acting part, I think helped me with my comfort level in front of a camera once I became a broadcaster. And once I the great thing about broadcasting is the sense of finality. Like once it's out of your mouth, it's out, right? It's gone. You can't take it back. There's no 7-second delay. So I really like that demand of live performing, and I developed a speaking career as well. And in many ways, the speaking career was easier than television, because if you wanted to know how you were doing in front of an audience, it was easy. Just look at the faces in the audience, and they'll tell you. And at first on TV, you finish doing something, you go, gosh, I hope that was okay. Hope they liked it. Hope the bosses, thought it was okay. You sort of second guess yourself, but it all worked out in the long run. Obviously, after that trip to Toronto, I figured I'd made it. Once in the Hockey Hall of Fame, it means that I'm old and that I did pretty decent work for a long time. That's what the Hall of Fame means to me.
Yeah. The funny thing about broadcasting is you're absolutely right. There is an adrenaline that goes with broadcasting too, just radio or whatever. And you've done radio shows.
Yeah.
I've done so many where I go, oh, that was great today. What a great show. And you walk back after the show's over and you walk by the program director and he pulls you and goes, what the hell were you doing today? That was awful. You're like, damn it. You're like, what the hell's going on? I thought that was good today. Like, where's my barometer?
Yeah,
and the
right.
TV's all pissed off at you.
You have to ask the boss, could you define excellence for me, please, one more time? I don't think we're on the same page here.
Yeah, but there's an adrenaline that goes with it, and there's a performance. And, as a competitor, you competed for so long.
Yeah.
You get into the broadcast booth, you don't take losses home, you don't take wins home, but you just get to be around the game. What did it mean to still be involved in the game that meant so much to you? And in a lot of ways here, Bill, in hindsight especially, it really lifted you out when you needed it the most after your playing career and, the restaurant and everything else.
Right. Well, it meant so much to know that, to understand once I got rolling with my broadcasting career, that we really are, the broadcasters are the conduit and the link between all of the thousands and thousands of fans and the teams that they're passionate about. And you have to take that pretty seriously if you're a broadcaster. One of the things that was hard for me to learn was to say something negative on the air, because I was still a player, and you don't badmouth another player, you don't do that stuff. So there was a separation that had to happen, and I had to get used to it. And I can tell you that doing national games in some ways was easier than doing Flyers games, because I did Flyers games for a couple of years and went away, did more national, and then came back to the Flyers. But on a national level, I didn't have an alliance or an allegiance or a tie to either one of the teams that I was broadcasting. And it was really easy to be objective and easy to be neutral. It's funny, when I do a Flyers game on ESPN, I would get hate mail. Why are you always cheering against the Flyers? Well, they were used to hearing, you know,
A local
Gene Hart and local broadcasters, and every local broadcaster sort of leans to the home team.
Sure.
And I did that when I was doing Flyers games because I really cared about the team and I got to know the players. And in that sense, it was almost more difficult to do Flyers games for a Flyers broadcast than it was to do a national game where you were supposed to be neutral. And it's, for me, it's easier to be neutral than to watch what you say, calling the home team. I love them both. I got to know. The greatest thing is I knew players on every team when I was working on ESPN, including Flyers players. You're around them, you get to know them. And I felt like I had relationships with so many players and so many teams. People say, who's your favorite team? That's hard. There are players that I know and like and respect on every team. And because of that, it was really hard to have a favorite when I was calling national games.
Yeah. And the home fan base can be a little sensitive too.
Every town, every city. Philadelphia, yes, but other cities too.
No doubt.
New York, see New York in parentheses. New York can be tough too.
Billy, one of the things that I noticed in working around you, we never really worked together, but we worked around each other with the Flyers broadcast, and we would meet with the coaches pregame, before games, and your preparation to me is something that always popped out. You're very diligent in your preparation for the game, and your angles, and you go in and want to be very educated on details of a team, of a coach, a system, or whatever it might be.
Right.
And where did that come from? Because a lot of guys go in and they go, I'm just going to react to what I see, especially as an analyst, right?
Right.
But you have that ability, but you also had the ability and work ethic of very diligent prep. Where did that come from?
I'm a born planner. It doesn't matter what I do. I drive my wife crazy a lot of times, and other people. If I'm the president of our HOA here down in North Carolina on the side of a mountain, and I try to lead with enthusiasm and good attitude, but I'm a planner, and everybody knows that. They don't have to worry going into a project that it's not going to be, kind of lined up. That's just my nature. I really believe in preparation. I tried to do that as a player. But there was a philosophical underpinning for how I prepared for a meeting with a player, or if I was going to the rink to the morning skate, I'd have questions lined up for the coaches, for the different players that I hope to talk to, and I would seek out specific players. But the philosophical underpinning of all of it was there has to be a good story to tell on the air, but even more than that, ask questions, the answers to which I'm able to see on the ice and tell people about.
Yeah.
Whether it's the system, like what can get you, and I'll ask a coach, what is one thing you want to avoid in a game against this type of team? What can get you into trouble against them? Then I'm watching for it on the air. So I've actually set myself up to describe things that I've already gathered information on that I can show people a visual of.
Yeah.
And
because he's putting it into practice.
Yeah, right. And then people say, "Wow, he's really good," but that's just planning.
Yeah.
It's just preparing. And when you land on your feet like that, I think it helps enhance at least the perceived level of expertise that you have. But it's all
Totally.
It's all pieced together. You know what I mean?
Yep. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
When you can go in and say they want to avoid this in the neutral zone, and then you see it happening, or you see its prevention from happening.
Right.
You're 2 steps ahead now.
Yep, there it is. This is what we talked about. And when I worked at ESPN, Tom McNeely was our producer for years. We would have a Bill Walsh list. Like Bill Walsh used to script the first 5 plays of the game when he coached, in college and then in the pros. And we would meet in the morning and do the Bill Walsh list. who's the first player you want to see, or what do you want to do first? Well, I want to talk about what this team is going to try to do in this game. So give me a shot of the coach and then a shot of the bench, and that way I lay it out. And I call that planting the seeds. And I've tried to help young broadcasters, like, get 3 or 4 seeds, 5 if you can, that you plant early in the game. And then you water the seeds, right?
Yep.
Hopefully see them grow. And then you pay them off as the game goes. And at the end, you might be able to put a nice bow on it and say, we started the game by talking about this, and this is exactly what happened. Or it was not a factor at all.
Yep.
You know what I
And
mean?
hence the result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's either this is what we talked about was going to be a factor. It was not a factor, and they won anyway, or they didn't win because it wasn't a factor. It's
Yep.
just like you weave these threads through the telecast. To me, that's I like to think of that you're prepared for a beginning and a middle and an end of an
Mhm.
event, so that it all kind of works together by the time you finish it. Does that make any sense?
It's the old radio adage. Tell them you're going to do it well. Tell them you did it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You got to meet with so many coaches. We know about the personalities of NHL coaches, guys like Bruce Boudreau or Roger Nielsen was just a fantastic human being.
Yeah.
Peter Laviolette, all over the league. You met with Mike Keenan in the early 90s. You have some memorable coaching interactions in your pregame meetings with them?
Oh,
There's so many, and there's so many absolute beauties.
yeah. But the, the ones that were difficult were the ones that didn't trust you.
Mhm.
If a coach is not confident in himself and at peace, with his own, persona and his scheme and everything, they're very closed. Most of them were not, but a lot of the Canadian coaches, there was this Canadian American bias.
Yeah.
I'm dual citizen, but especially in Montreal, French coaches, Jean Perron, when he coached the Montreal Canadiens, he didn't want to tell you anything.
Didn't tell you
There
his
are other
name.
coaches that would say, look, I don't want this going on the air, but this is what, there are guys that are willing to go off the record with you. A guy that's having great success in New Jersey, Lindy Ruff. I played against Lindy. I've known him for years. We were in Buffalo one time, and the PR guy came out before we had a chance to talk to Lindy in the morning. He was in the coach's room, and he says, you said something on the air about Lindy, and he's really pissed off. He wants to see you. And I went, I wonder what I said. And I go into the coach's room, and the coach is all sitting there, and he looks at me, and he just sort of stares at me with this stern face. And I said, I understand I said something that didn't sit well with you. And he stared at me, and then he went,
He knew he was breaking your balls.
oh yeah, he was just putting me on. But there was also when Mark Messier went to the Rangers. When he first got to the Rangers, I think Smith, not Mike Smith, Ron Smith was coaching, and I said on a radio interview, I said, look, he got fired, and I said, if Mark Messier got him fired, then Mark Messier was only doing what he was brought to New York to do, to not stand for something if he knew they couldn't win the Stanley Cup with the guy.
Yeah.
Right. So I got a call, and he said, yeah, you said on the air that I should have been fired. I said, did you hear me say that? He said, no, but friends called me and told me.
Oh,
I always
sorry.
ask, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Right. He said, no. And I explained, no, that's not how it went down. Right. I said this, and then, if Mark, and believe me, Mark Messier made a lot of things happen that people don't know about. A lot of things happen. And I respect the hell out of him for that. That's what great leadership is. Great leadership doesn't sit in the corner and cower when things are bad. They make changes and look for solutions.
The
right?
hard decisions, Billy.
Yeah.
It
Right.
sometimes won't be popular and can earn you some enemies along the way too, but they're
Well,
about winning.
You know what I've told people, Jason? When I would speak to groups about leadership, and I haven't used it for years, but when I started talking about leadership, one of the things I reminded people is true leadership can be lonely.
Yeah.
Because when you stand up and say something that has to be said, to a group, you're going to alienate a number of them. And the great thing about being a leader that can do that is it will all come back in time. Everything will normalize in time. But if you're willing to withstand that loneliness, when you said some really strong things that have alienated people, you're going to be lonely for a while. That's just part of it, and it'll heal, and and they'll end up respecting you for saying what you said. Now that's Mark Messier, man. That was Mark. You know,
Yeah.
Wayne in Edmonton a lot of times, and Wayne has admitted this many times that Wayne would have the message that he would want to deliver, and he let Mark deliver the message.
Yeah.
Right.
You be the voice of the message.
Yeah. Right.
That's
I'll
not
be the
my
writer.
strong.
You be the voice.
Yeah. Sometimes players, they don't want to hear the truth. So you become the messenger becomes the enemy, not the message.
Yes, exactly. Thus the expression, don't kill the messenger.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just telling you what's real here, brother.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
stink tonight. But yeah, I mean, as that leader, sometimes, young players especially be able to look at it and go, he's always so serious. This is supposed to be fun, blah, blah, blah. We're playing pro hockey. We got this dough, all this money, and they don't want to hear it. But some guys are there not to play hockey. They're there to win. And that was mess.
That was I said I'd interviewed him before the game, after he'd won 5 Stanley Cups, and he's in New York. And I said, what keeps you going? Like, I guess he was 40 by then. What keeps you going? I said, winning, baby. So I want to win another one.
Yeah.
And he ended up winning a 6th cup, with the New York Rangers in '94. That's a lot of Stanley Cups, man.
Uh-huh. You got a lot. That's a lot of weight on your hands when you're wearing all those rings. I think he could still play today. I mean, he still looks fit as a fiddle. It's unbelievable.
I like Mark. I love Mark.
Yeah, such a competitor. Great, great player. In some ways, maybe overshadowed because of the just insane numbers of Gretzky and Lemieux and those guys at that time.
Yeah.
Let's go back to '94 because you're doing games at that time. It's my favorite hockey broadcast booth of all time. Yourself and Gary Thorne, Al on the glass on many nights.
Yeah.
But you've worked with some incredible play-by-play guys, Doc Emmerich, some of the best in the history of the game. What was that time like with Gary Thorne, Noah, and why did you guys just mesh so beautifully on the air?
Well, we never pre-discussed anything before a game. So Gary, I prided myself on being quick on my feet and being able to follow up on something that my partner says, and Gary was like that. So I think the spontaneity of it, also Gary's voice and his call, was just grabs you and drags you through the screen, right to the game.
Perfection.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, we had a down time though together. And it was in 93. 93. We were doing a game in St. Louis, and Gary called Sergio Mimosa. And I said, "Whoa, sounds like you're ready for a vacation. Let's go for the mimosas." And then he didn't say anything. I said, "Oh, maybe you're thinking of mini mimosa because you do baseball too." And we went to break, and I said something to him, and he said, "Maybe it's correcting your effing partner's mistakes on the air," and threw his headset down and stormed out of the booth. And I was completely taken aback. And after the game, we went back to the hotel, and Gary was nowhere to be found. Our producer and our director, they, came into the bar and they said, "Our show's done. We're done. You guys this is the worst thing that ever happened." I said, "No." I said, "It's not done." They said, "Yeah." I said, "No, it's not done." They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Leave this to me. It's not done." So we actually did another game, and Gary was very distant. And then we did a taped open on the ice in Pittsburgh at the old Igloo. And I said to him when we were finished, I said, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And he said, "Yeah." So we walked down this long hallway where the old nets are stored. And I leaned up against the net and I said, "Look, I apologize. I would never, ever try to embarrass my partner on the air. I said, and I'm sorry for that. I thought we were kind of like teammates in the locker room, having fun with one another, busting a little bit. I said, I know one thing, that neither of us will be perceived to be the best at what we do unless we're perceived to be the best team. And it's funny, Gary had trouble with some pronunciations, and he said, well, you don't think I can hear you? When you hit the talk back and talk to our producer and try and correct me when I'm saying something wrong, I said, wait a minute. I said, I'm doing that as a safety net. I said, is our producer not telling you in your ear the proper pronunciation just so it doesn't happen again? He said, no, he never says anything. I said, I was doing that not to make fun of you. I was doing that to try to help you like I would anytime you need help. I'll
Yeah.
never leave you stranded. And I said, I respect the heck out of you. And I think we're the best team on the air and the best team that's ever existed in many ways. So all I want to do is be the best partner I can be with you. So if there's anything that ever happens, wait till after the game and come and talk to me about it. And I'll apologize and let you know that it wasn't ill intended. And we shook hands and he said, I'm glad we cleared the air. And our relationship after that was better than it ever was. And
You're teammates now.
pardon? Yeah.
You were teammates now.
True
It went to a
teammates. Well,
different level.
He trusted my
Yeah.
motivation.
Yeah.
He thought, well, people in the truck are making fun of me now. I said, you're not getting the message? He said, no, he never tells me. I said, oh my God. I said, that explains a lot. So this was
Yeah.
building with Gary, and he never said anything about it. But I respect the hell out of him. My gosh, he's the brightest guy, the greatest call, the greatest laugh. Our humor was always just spontaneous, genuinely laughing.
You guys cut the tension at times with that.
Oh yeah, yeah. But that was a short little snippet of our 7 years together. Or 6 years together. Doc and I worked for 7 years together, and Doc was brand new to television. He'd done play-by-play on radio, and I was kind of new to it as well in 1987. So Doc and I meshed. To this day, Doc is one of my favorite people on the planet, but so is Jim Jackson. So is Jiggs McDonald. I did 3 years with Jiggs McDonald on Sports Channel America. He sent me a congratulatory text, when I was up in Toronto. It's funny. I said in my acceptance speech, my name is the only one on the crystal plaque with my picture on it that goes up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And for people on the outside looking in, it's easy to look at this as an individual award. I said, it isn't. I said, I didn't get here by myself. Nobody gets into the Hall of Fame by themselves. Play-by-play partners, the greats, the producers, the directors, the camera people, the stage managers, everybody has a piece of somebody getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Family, right? You're on the road in the playoffs for 2 solid months. So it's a team award that one person gets singled out for, but it's not an individual award. I've never looked at it that way and never will.
Yeah, that's so well said. And what a story that is about Gary. That's amazing. And the way you attacked it, Billy, like, I'm not doing this to make you look bad. I'm doing this to help. And once he noticed your sincerity, that you were there to be a great teammate of his, that changed everything. And that can take that to the next level. And you on the air, you better have trust in that guy next to you. I've done radio shows with guys I didn't trust, telling me, don't even worry about that. Well, I'm worried about that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't minimize my worry,
Right.
And when you don't trust that person that you're working across from, and you're out there to everybody and exposed, it's a hard thing. It's a really hard thing.
Well, Jason, I want to tell you something. I consider that, and I wrote about it in my book. One of the most difficult things for people in any walk of life, sports or otherwise, is having the tough conversation.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite book on leadership is called The Servant Leader by James Autry. And I was reading it just a couple of years ago, and in one page, I've always thought it's so hard for people to have what I call the tough conversation. That was a tough conversation I had with Gary, but I was committed to it. But this guy, James Autry, said, in any business, any walk of life, the toughest thing for management to do is to have that tough conversation. It's easy to say, hey, Jim, we hired you. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. The greatest shortcoming of people in leadership positions, management positions, is to go to somebody and say, you know what, Jim? you're not doing what we expected. Tell me why.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
need
tough
more.
conversation. But you know who I learned that who I watched have tough conversations was Bobby Clark.
Hmm.
As a 23-year-old, as a 24-year-old, as a 25-year-old, he uh, he was able to have the very demanding, tough conversations. He was Clarky was afraid of nothing when he played.
How did he have that ability at that age to be a leader at 23 years of age and be able to go to guys much older than you,
Yeah,
guys that have been in the league a long time, accomplished a great deal? That takes stones big enough to carry in a dump truck at
yeah,
23 years of age.
yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with the hatred of losing. When
Yeah.
I got traded to Washington right after our second cup, I mean, the draft was, I don't know, 17 days after we won our second cup, and the Flyers wanted Washington's #1 pick overall. So I was part of the deal that went to Washington.
And
That
got
summer,
Bridgman
I
for
was
that, right?
on the chicken, potatoes, and peas circuit with the president of our team, Peter O'Malley, driving me around. And he was driving along one day on the Beltway in Washington, and he says, "You know what? We want to build this Washington team, this Capitals team with guys like you Flyers, guys that just love to win." And driving along, it just hit me. And I looked at him and I said, "Peter, can I tell you something?" He said, "Yeah, what?" I said, "I think you should build a team with guys that hate to lose because everybody loves to win, but not everybody hates to lose." And that was Bobby Clark. Clarky had such a hatred for losing that I think it was part of the impetus that pushed him forward to say the tough things and have the tough conversations. Same with Mark Messier. They hated losing. Hated, hated, hated. You don't win Stanley Cups unless you've got at least a significant percentage of players that hate to lose.
Yeah. There's a joy in winning, but the hate to lose can be even more pronounced
Yeah.
than, you get the win, you go, okay, we got the win. That's what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
But if I lose, it just infects you in a way. Chris
Yeah.
Pronger was that way, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Prongs was like that. Prongs was like that, but almost to the point where he took it too far on the ice sometimes.
He was
Like in
nasty.
two different years, when once when he was playing in St. Louis in the playoffs, he blatantly elbowed Tomas Holmstrom in the head and got suspended for a game. And then when he was playing in Anaheim, you're in the Stanley Cup Finals against Ottawa, and he cheap shot at Dean McCammon and knocked him out with an elbow and got suspended for another game.
Yeah.
So there were times when, like, I don't know, the message didn't get there in time from the brain to the elbows. So it's great to be that fierce competitor, but there were times when I thought Chris Pronger's hatred for losing might have got, I mean, it could have jeopardized the whole series, the whole Stanley
You
Cup.
to find a way to control it a little bit too, to make
Exactly.
yourself as effective and available, because
Yeah.
the only thing that matters, and it doesn't matter how good you are in sports if you're not available.
Yeah.
Do you see any, when you look at the league today, do you see some of those great leaders in the game today? The way it was back then, because the game is different now. They're all friends. They're all in the PA together.
Yeah.
They have a common goal in that regard of growing HRR. So
Yeah.
it is a different ball game now. But do you still see some of those great leaders of sport in the NHL?
Well, I see one, and it's always more beneficial if your best leader is one of your best players.
Yeah.
Right, because there are third and fourth line guys that are great leaders, but they don't have a chance to let that leadership skill manifest itself on the ice as much as a great player. The guy that I really really admire is Steven Stamkos down in
Oh,
Tampa.
man. Yeah.
He answers the call after a significant loss. He will address the media. He is highly respected in the room. He's had 2 ACL reconstructions, and I think he's got 9 goals, and he might have had more. I haven't paid attention for a couple of days. But Steven Stamkos is highly, highly respected in that Tampa locker room and is able to say that, the things that need to be said at the right time. And one of the keys to having that tough conversation is not screaming at people or raising your voice. it's saying what has to be said in a very committed way, and then showing everybody. Presence is the cornerstone of leadership. You better, if you say we have to do this, you better go and walk the talk, because they're not going to buy it, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're actually out there leading the way, doing what you suggested to everybody has to be done. And that's the way Steven Stamkos is.
Yeah, I mean, the guy scored 60 in a season. The one year he comes back and plays the 2 shifts in the game and gets a goal, but the
Yeah,
next year he comes back for the second cup and was unbelievable.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
he's
He's
a guy's battled.
easy to like, an easy guy to like.
Yeah. Let's wrap up on this, Bill. Last question for you, because you spent some time with him over the years. Speaking of a guy that'll tell you how he feels, there's a coach here in Philadelphia by the name of John Tortorella, and I don't think he's ever held back a feeling in the world. But he brings a ton of accountability that is daily. It never has a day off accountability with him, and a standard and a way of playing. And, he believes that, working hard, that's no feather in your cap. You're supposed to do that. You don't get points for working hard. What do you think of Torts as the man to kind of lead the Flyers back and rediscover a little bit of their DNA and their identity?
He's the right guy. The Flyers got young and kind of got soft, and needed to be shown a different way to play. The one thing about Torts that I love is that he believes that he's right. But he believes in his philosophical approach. He believes in his notions of what has to be done. He believes in blocking shots. He believes all of that, and he believes that's how you win. And he's a proven winner. Now, for some players, he's going to be really difficult because they've cheated their whole careers.
Yeah.
Maybe when the puck goes the other way, you're supposed to be back checking like that. Oh, I'm just going to delay. It looks like we might have a turnover and I could get fed for a breakaway. He boils inside when he sees stuff like that. So there's no shortcutting. There's no cheating under John Tortorella, and he's really demanding. But here's the best. I'll give you the best thing and the worst thing about John Tortorella. The best thing is he's really demanding and hard on his players, but he's fair.
Mhm.
He doesn't ask them to do anything that he doesn't truly believe you have to do to win, and he wants everybody to do it. Duh. That seems fair to me. And you talk about a leader being willing to withstand some loneliness after alienating yourself, right, to certain players and certain top players, depending on what he does. But that's what he does, and he should be commended for his leadership skills and his belief in his own philosophy about how the game should be played. It's not a bad thing or a shortcoming. It's just that when you're that intense and you demand that much, at some point, look, every coach has an expiration date tattooed right on their forehead, right? They can't see it, but it's there,
Yeah.
almost to, like, with rare exception. And in hockey, it's what is it? A 3-year
2.5
window?
years.
What? How much?
The average right now is about 2.5 years.
There you go. It's about
Yeah.
2.5 to 3 years.
He's had long
So
stints though, Billy. It's weird. 7 in Tampa, 6 in New York, 6 in Columbus.
yeah, because he gets results,
Mhm.
right?
And his
But
team's arc.
yeah, yep. He's going to have that expiration date, and he's hard on players. So he's going to move on like everybody. But I would have loved to play for Torts because I was a workaholic. I worked hard. Just that's one thing. The only 2 things that anybody could have accused me of that really would have been hurtful for me was A, that I wasn't a good team player, and B, that I didn't work hard. If you could call me anything you wanted, you could say that I was gutless. You could say that I was intimidated by certain guys on other teams. I'd go, yeah. In certain situations, I'm going to fess up on that one. But if you say, you don't work very hard, I'd go, you're wrong, and
Yeah.
you're not a good team guy. You're wrong.
And those things are controllable, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what Torts wants, right? Is for guys to control what they can control.
Control
And
the
that's why he
controllable.
wanted them in such great shape. And look, they got out of the blocks well. But at some point, the other teams kind of catch up conditioning wise, and you end up scratching your head. It's good to see Carter Hart back. I know that.
Yeah.
Uh, it's hard. It's a hard league. Look at the Metropolitan Division, Chase.
Yeah.
It's a damn hard division and a really hard league to play in. So that's why the Devils fans wanted Lindy Ruff gone after 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah. They'll be
Right?
chanting, "Sorry, Lindy."
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry, Lindy. So what are they
Awesome.
won? 12 in a row now?
Yeah, they're just unbelievable.
That's incredible. And Lindy is. We used to joke about Lindy because we'd say he's Lindy on the road and rough at home.
Or rough on the road. Lindy at home, rough on the road.
No, he
Oh,
was
rough at home.
Lindy on the road, rough at home. He didn't play
Rough.
rough on the road. He
Yeah.
just played rough at home. He was a great guy, though. Really good man. There's so many good people. That's the best thing about our sport. I said this in Toronto too. It's authentic,
Mhm.
real people, genuine people, and that's what makes it such a great sport to be associated with and have the privilege. I left home at 15 to play the game that I love. It wasn't a sport then; it was a game, and to be able to remain associated with it all the way up, except for that little, the 3 or 4 year period in between, and be able to go into the Hall of Fame, the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I'd never really been into the new Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto,
Oh, it's
and we
beautiful.
all went. There were 17 of us on a week ago last Sunday, and toured the hall. And gosh, there are some great displays there. Going into they have a room set up like the great
Montreal
Montreal
Forum.
Canadiens team's locker room with their
Yeah.
jerseys all hanging there.
Patrick
Oh,
Waugh's pads.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
I
yeah.
freaked out. I had a meltdown in there.
Yeah. Isn't it great?
It's the old Montreal Forum locker room, redone, and it
Well,
is.
I was telling the group that I was with,
Oof.
my nephews are good players. They both played college hockey. And, but I said, look at the record of the Canadians after the Flyers won, and we won 74-75, and Montreal went in their run. I think it was 1978. They lost 8 games.
Oh my God.
8 freaking games in one season. That's all they lost. And I went, whew, no wonder they kept winning. Yikes.
Yeah. It's amazing, Bill, because the Flyers win the back-to-back cups that you're a part of in 74 and 75. Flyers go back to the cup final I haven't found a comparable in any sport. They go back to the cup final in 76, and they get swept. You're not on that team. They get swept by Montreal, and they win 4 straight cups. In 1980, they go back. They take on the New York Islanders. The Islanders win their first of 4 straight cups. They go in 85 and 87. They lose to Edmonton, who win 5 cups in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
They go back in 97, lose to Detroit, who wins 3 cups in 5 years. They go back in 2010. They lose to Chicago, who wins 3 cups in 5 years. I have not found a comparable in any sport of a team that's gotten to a finals and faced a dynasty that won a cup in their first cup of that dynasty in any sport. No comparable, not even close. It's unbelievable.
You're right, huh? Yeah, Pete, was funny. It's easy to forget the teams that finish second, right? Or the teams that lose to the champions. But when you start putting it on a grid like that and evaluating excellence, it should count for something, right?
15 cups of those opponents total.
Wow.
It's in that window of those specific teams. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, Bill, let me be the next one, and certainly not the final one, to offer you massive congratulations. So well deserved to head into the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're thrilled for you. We're thrilled that you worked in this market for so long, and we got to experience you on a national level and on a local level. So congratulations. Enjoy this. Keep the chainsaw going up there in the mountains, splitting that wood, keeping the heat on. And this was a great conversation. And the biggest thing I'm going to take away from it is the stuff that you had to say about leadership, because I think that's so important. As people that listen to this and watch this show, their bosses and their leaders and teams and sports and all that stuff and at work. And you said so much that people can take out of it. So thanks for doing this as always, and stay well.
Pleasure, Jason. Anytime, man. All I have to do is put my chainsaw down and walk into my office and crank this machine up in front of me known as a laptop. And we can do this anytime you want. It's always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
There he is, Bill Clement, and that is our interview of the year, man. He was just fun to talk to. Man, what a great conversation. I love talking to Bill about his experiences and that stuff about, going through the depression and out of the game and the restaurant, the kind of coming to a head with Gary Thorne. I mean, what? No clue. I had no clue about any of that. Fantastic. So thanks to Bill Clement. Congrats again. And that was our interview of the year 2022. We'll be back Monday with another brand new episode, kick off 2023 in style. And it'll be a lot of fun. Let me tell you about Bet Parks because it's a fantastic time of year with all the bowl games, college football. You've got pro football heading towards the playoffs, which is a great time to bet futures, live in-game betting, same-game parlays, you name it, player performances, props, teasers. It's all there for you, and it's all simple to use and simple to navigate on the Bet Parks app. So grab it today. It is an awesome casino and sportsbook app. It travels with you in the palm of your hand. And take it from me, it's everything you've wanted in a mobile casino and sportsbook. So download the Bet Parks app today. Maybe you have it downloaded, but you just haven't gotten in the action in a while. Well, I'm here to remind you that's been a lot of fun. Get back in. Get back in on the action. All new and existing users can use the promo code Jason750 to get your risk-free bet up to $750. And, it's terms and conditions apply. Again, new and existing users, Jason750. So get it. Download the app today. Get back on the wagon and get your action in with the Bet Parks app and the mobile casino. Do you need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey? Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Everybody, thanks for a great year on Bet Parks presents Stick to Hockey Live. Enjoy your new year. Stay safe, and we will talk to you coming up. Can you believe it? 2023. Remember Y2K? That feels like an eternity ago. Well, we'll talk to you coming up on Monday as we kick off a new calendar year right here on Bet Parks presents Stick to Hockey Live. Have a great weekend, everybody.